You could put it like this, that the space of possibility, all of the ideas, is infinitely greater than reality. And this fascinates me because it means all the decisions to make something real are created by humans. The process in which this happens is design. And design is not simply choosing the scale of a logo on a minimalist website, or the colour plan stock colour you want for your duplex business card. Design is a much more significant topic than it is often given credit for. Design is the process in which ideas harden into reality. And when those designs accumulate, they become culture. Design is culture. And I am very concerned that we are losing culture. It is becoming desaturated, less rich, faster, and more convenient. Complexity theorist Stuart Kauffman describes something as the adjacent possible. This means that an invention emerges from nearby inventions. You cannot have an iPhone in medieval England because all the steps preceding it are missing. It's obvious, but I'll say it anyway. You need electricity, right, to be able to get to the iPhone, and then wires and batteries and semiconductors and touch screens, etc. You need machines that make iPhones. And all of the objects around us can trace that lineage, all of those steps, all the way back to man's first tools. Whether it's a church, a leaflet, or a flip-flop, every object contains that information. By the way, do you know what the ugliest object ever made by man is? It is a turquoise crock. Here, it is a single turquoise crock, dirty, lonely, and foul. It did not need to be that way. These were decisions that were made within all of the parameters of design, whether it's materials, scale, size, colour, density, all of those things. And if those decisions are made under the duress of time or the constraints of cost, then they can be made poorly. What you put in is what you get out. And we could see with unconscientious design decisions, we could see it drip feed into our culture. Now, I make watches for a living, which is absurd when you think about it. Our ancestors trying to not get eaten by lions on the African savannah, and yet now we machine titanium into tiny wearable sculptures that tell time to such precision that our ancestors could not comprehend nor even care about. You see, a mechanical watch is such an improbable object. If you found one on another planet, it would surely indicate intelligent life. Physicist David Deutsch describes to us that to get an improbable object, you need knowledge to shape the matter. You take a heap of atoms. Knowledge are the crafting hands that give us a wristwatch. Because a watch cannot self-assemble on its own, it is too many steps deep to do that. And out of all of the complex and improbable objects that we make, maybe future archaeologists could discover a thing or two about us. Perhaps a surveillance camera would speak of our anxiety and our fear, and devices would tell the story of stolen attention. Algorithms that have confused us into thinking facts are intelligence and attention is understanding. And that's because all of these objects instruct us and they change our behaviour. And this is where design stops becoming just about decoration and is an ethical discipline. And this is why design is so important, because I believe that ethics is a founding principle of design. It starts there. It wraps design. Because the choices we make are ethical in the respect to when we design roads. Roads instruct our behaviour, explicitly so. And it's obvious if that is not done ethically, it would be disastrous. Interfaces instruct our behaviour. A chair will instruct posture, authority or state of mind, and a city could instruct loneliness or community. Media theorist Marshall McLuhan famously said, "We shape our tools and thereafter they shape us." And I believe this is true for nearly everything, even those small, insignificant things that we take for granted, that we now know are affecting our behaviour in such grave ways. And with all of that possibility within that idea space, we choose this. We choose this city, this interface, housing estate or plastic spoon. We choose this font, this algorithm, and this culture. And that's because it didn't have to be that way. They were not accidents the way it was designed. It is the responsibility of the designer to choose what is real. Because the designed world is not a reflection of culture, it manufactures culture. And with conscientious design, we instinctively know when something is well made and is made carefully. And we may carry that object with us for the rest of our lives. And we also know when something is made cheaply and to be disposable. We know it's disposable before we even buy it. We accept that we have harmony with places and things, and sometimes we do not. And this is because beauty is not superficial. Beauty is evidence of conscientious design. It may be obvious, or it may be there to be discovered. Philosopher and psychiatrist Ian McGilchrist is concerned that our culture is becoming dominated by narrow attention, objectifying, quantifying, accelerating everything. And perhaps we are losing our sensitivity to a wholeness, to the texture and vibe of the big picture, to greater meaning. We are so sensitive to design, even subconsciously. Take the big light, for example. If the big light goes on, it can ruin your mood in an instant. But what if the big light was designed conscientiously, with no light bulb showing, with many louvers that diffuse the light to strict percentages? Then that light would become a multi-generational family heirloom. Because let's not forget that we inhabit man-made environments, not natural ones. And this is why it matters. Researchers now tell us that all man-made stuff, buildings, electric cars, plastic spoons, outweigh all of Earth's biomass. That is, everything we made real now outweighs Earth's plants and trees. This is terrifying and shocking. And it's partly because the pressure within the space of possibilities is so great that all those ideas want to get out. They all want to be real, whether they are good or bad. And sadly, so many of the objects that we design are not made with beauty or meaning or the big picture. They are made to be convenient. And convenience isn't always good for culture, ignoring, of course, sanitation and running water, right? I remember when I was young, the invention of the TV remote control was considered a threat to human health because people would no longer be getting up, okay, and changing the channel on the TV. It was a reduction in activity. And everybody at the time, of course, thought that was ridiculous. But now, I think it was portentous. Because frictionless systems create frictionless thinking. And disposable products create disposable relationships. And there is so much vying for our attention and overwhelming noise that where is it that we get time to think about deep and complex and improbable problems to solve design issues? Brings me back to the beginning. There are more probable chairs than there are real chairs. There are more probable hats than there are real hats, though the opposite may seem true sometimes. But there are also more probable futures than there are real futures. And that's because the world doesn't have to be that way. It is authored through billion acts of design. And this is the responsibility of a designer to choose from the space of possibilities what deserves to be real. That is a real responsibility. Because out of all of the worlds, we'd have decided to build this one. Thank you.